Everyone laughed at her for helping a homeless man, until they found out who he really was. Before we begin, drop a comment below letting us know where you're watching from. I love seeing how far our stories are reaching. And if you're into love stories full of emotion, resilience, and fresh starts, make sure to subscribe to the channel. That way, you won't miss any content, and you'll also be helping this space keep growing. The wind was slicing through the streets of Dallas that December night like invisible blades. The sky seemed to press down on the low buildings of Oak Cliff, one of the city's oldest neighborhoods, where cracked sidewalks and rusty lampposts told stories of neglect and resilience. Emily Dawson pulled her worn coat tighter around her, a thin body, as she walked with tired steps toward the municipal hospital's parking lot. She had just finished a 14-hour shift. Her deep green eyes, like wet leaves, were shadowed with dark circles. Her reddish-brown hair, tied in a loose bun, swayed with the wind. Despite her exhaustion, her eyes still carried something rare: tenderness. Emily was 28, and her soul didn't fit into the labels the world liked to use. Some saw her as too naive, others as too good for her own good. But for her, helping wasn't a choice, it was instinct. As she turned the corner near the Jefferson Boulevard overpass, she suddenly stopped. A figure collapsed near the tracks, made her squint. Most people would cross the street. She didn't. The man was lying on the ground, curled up against the freezing concrete. His face was covered in dirt, his light brown hair tangled, and his lips were purple from the cold. The coat he wore was torn and damp. But what caught Emily's attention most was the deep cut above his eyebrow, fresh blood running down. She crouched down slowly, heart racing. "Hey, sir, can you hear me?" The man groaned something unintelligible. He opened his grayish-blue eyes for a brief moment, as if struggling against an invisible weight. "My name is Emily. I'm a nurse. You're hurt. I'm going to help you, okay?" "No, please, don't take me there," he murmured in a weak voice, trying to pull away. "I'm not going to hurt you. Trust me." She looked around. No cars, no help. She grabbed her phone but hesitated. She knew that if she called an ambulance, he'd be taken straight to the ER and, without ID, treated like a vagrant, or worse, thrown back out on the street the next day. Emily took a deep breath. She took off her scarf and pressed it against his wound, trying to stop the bleeding. After a few minutes, she managed to help him sit up. He could barely stand. "Come on, I live nearby. You need to warm up. Then we'll take care of this." With effort, she draped his arm over her shoulders and led him through the empty streets to her small rented house 5 blocks away. It was a simple place, with peeling drywall and thrift store furniture. But it was warm, with soup on the stove and clean blankets. As soon as she walked in with him, the neighbor's dog barked. A couple from the house next door peeked out the window. The woman, wrapped in a cheap satin robe, crossed her arms and whispered loudly to her husband, "There goes the little nurse. Brought a bum into her house now. She's gonna get robbed by that lowlife." Emily pretended not to hear. She helped the man onto the couch, got a damp towel, and started gently cleaning his face. "Do you remember your name?" He looked at her for a few seconds, confused, as if trying to grab a fleeting memory. "Andrew. I think it's Andrew." She nodded. "That's a start for me." She handed him a mug of hot tea with trembling hands. As he drank, she watched in silence. There was something about that man, a reserved, almost elegant air that didn't match a life on the streets. But right then, all that mattered was that he was alive. And she had saved him. That night, Emily slept on the living room floor to leave the couch for Andrew. The neighbors kept talking, some laughed, others judged. But deep down, she knew she had done the right thing. The next morning, the pale winter light filtered through Emily's faded curtains, casting a golden hue over the modest sofa where Andrew slept. The heater hissed in the corner of the room, spreading a timid warmth, just enough to drive away the biting cold of the previous night. Still wearing her wrinkled cotton t-shirt, her hair loose over her shoulders, Emily watched the man sleep with quiet focus. There was something about his posture, even in his weakened state, that didn't fit the usual image of a homeless person. He woke slowly, frowning as if the light hurt. "Good morning," she said softly, approaching with a cup of hot coffee. He sat up with difficulty. He still looked weak. He ran a hand through his messy light brown hair, then touched the bandage now covering the cut on his forehead. You're the nurse, right, Emily?" she confirmed with a small smile. "You told me your name is Andrew. Do you remember anything else?" He held the cup with both hands, trying to warm them. His grayish-blue eyes wandered around the room, as if searching for clues in the surroundings. There were stacks of books in the corner, a small vintage radio, crooked frames on the walls with quotes about kindness. "It's strange. Some words come clearly, but my head, it feels like it's wrapped in fog. Do you remember what happened before last night?" "Not exactly. I remember driving, I think, a smell of gasoline, and then silence. A really loud silence." Emily sat in front of him, legs crossed on the thin rug. Her eyes held a mix of curiosity and compassion. "You speak in a way that's very different from the people I usually see in shelters. The way you talk, your vocabulary. It's like you're from somewhere else." Andrew looked down. "Sometimes I hear things in my head, technical terms. Last night I dreamed about graphs, reports, meetings in glass-walled rooms. But everything came fast, like flashes. That sounds like someone who used to work in an office. And a good one." He gave a half-smile, bitter. "Or maybe I'm just imagining things." "No, you have the traits of someone educated, and the way you hold that cup. Your posture, it's not typical." Andrew looked at her with a quiet spark. "You observe too much, Emily." "I have to observe. I'm a nurse, and honestly, there's something about you that doesn't match the image everyone thinks they're seeing." That afternoon, while Andrew took a shower, the first in a long time, Emily decided to go out and buy clean clothes at a nearby thrift store. As she walked past her house, a group of neighbors whispered. A woman with platinum hair and a judgmental look murmured, loudly on purpose, "First a bum in the living room, now she's dressing him like a prince. That girl's gonna end up in trouble." Emily held her gaze steady. She didn't respond. She just pulled her coat tighter and kept walking. That night, Andrew appeared in the kitchen wearing the blue shirt she had brought him. His now clean hair revealed a cut that, though neglected, looked like it had once been done in an expensive salon. His broad shoulders began to take up space again, and his presence was starting to fill the room in a different way. It was as if, beneath the layers of dirt and loss, someone the world had forgotten was re-emerging. "This coffee has a hint of cardamom," he said after a sip. Emily looked at him, surprised. "How did you recognize that?" "I don't know. I just know." She smiled, but inside, a chill ran down her spine. Who was this man, really? And why wouldn't the growing feeling that he was being watched leave her alone? In the days that followed, Andrew's presence in Emily's modest home became a quiet routine. He hadn't fully regained his memory yet, but now he helped with chores, devoured old books from her shelf, and surprised Emily with intelligent comments about economics, engineering, and literature. Something in him seemed to be rebuilding itself from the inside, piece by piece. But outside that house, the city was starting to buzz with rumors. In the staff lounge at Dallas Metropolitan Hospital, where Emily worked, the chatter was constant. Coffee mugs were filled and emptied too, the rhythm of gossip spreading like a virus. "Have you seen who Emily's been spending time with lately?" whispered Miranda, the head nurse, adjusting her gold-rimmed glasses on her face. "They say she took a man off the street and brought him into her house. Sleeping on her couch and everything," added another nurse. arms crossed with a look of fake concern. And on top of that, he's good-looking. Maybe he's not that homeless after all, if you know what I mean. The laughter was muffled, but the venom hung in the air. Emily, just entering with her backpack over her shoulder, caught the end of the conversation. She stopped for a second, looked at them all, and said only, "I helped a human being who was lying on the ground bleeding, and I would do it again." No one replied, but their eyes said enough. At the end of that week, when the hospital administration announced the new supervisor for the department, Emily's name wasn't called. She had known for months she was the favorite. She worked double shifts, trained new staff, handled emergencies with calm and precision. But that morning, all she got was a tense smile from the administrative director. "Emily, you're excellent at what you do, but we need someone with a more stable image to represent the department. You're saying I'm being judged for helping someone? It's not about that. It's about perception. Appearance matters." She left the office with her heart in pieces. A light rain was falling outside, soaking the concrete in the parking lot and the hem of her uniform pants. In the hospital cafeteria, she sat alone with a cup of tea in her hands. Voices continued behind her like invisible splinters. She ruined everything over some stranger, must be in love or losing her mind. Emily squeezed the foam cup until it nearly collapsed. She looked out the window and saw a couple laughing in a car, the windshield wipers moving in a hypnotic rhythm. Deep in her chest, a flame of pain grew. But there was something greater there, something no one could put out. That night at home, Andrew noticed something was wrong. She came in quieter, paler. "Did they say something?" he asked, stepping closer with a dish towel still in his hands. She hesitated. "They said everything. That I lost the promotion because of you. That you're a risk. That I'm foolish, that I'm weak." Andrew took a deep breath, as if the guilt was crushing him. "I'm sorry, Emily. I never meant to..." But she cut him off firmly. "No, you don't have to apologize for existing. If I don't help someone when they need it most, then who will? They can take my job title, but they won't take away who I am." His eyes welled up. For the first time, Andrew didn't just see the nurse. He saw the woman. Strong, human, radiant. That night, while Emily slept in her room and Andrew looked out through the living room window at the distant flickering lights of Dallas, he felt something stir in his chest. A purpose, a sense of debt, and a quiet fear. Because somewhere out there, someone was about to find out that he was still alive. The Dallas night moved on silently when Andrew woke up on the living room couch, gasping for air. Sweat ran down his forehead, though the room was cold. His hands were trembling. His chest rose and fell as if he had just run miles. He looked around, disoriented, trying to anchor himself in reality. He had dreamed again, but this wasn't just any dream. It was vivid, almost tangible. In flashes, he saw a gold ring with a blue stone resting on a dark wooden table. Then, a modern room with glass walls, the city at his feet. Finally, a blonde woman, tears streaming down her face, screaming his name. But he couldn't hear her voice. He could only see her lips moving, like in a silent film. He ran his hands over his face and slowly got up. He walked to the kitchen and turned on the dim light above the counter. The house was silent, but Emily always left a candle lit in the corner of the living room, as if it somehow protected them from everything the world threw at them. He picked up a notebook and scribbled the images from his dream. He tried to do that whenever something came back. The ring, the city view, the woman. Her eyes, green? No, blue, intense, frightened. The next morning, Emily found the notebook on the table and flipped through it, curious. When she saw the drawing of the ring, she frowned. "Have you seen this somewhere before?" Andrew was making coffee, his back to her. He stopped for a moment. "Only in dreams." Every time I close my eyes, that ring shows up. And the woman, she looks at me like I broke her heart. Do you think she was your wife? I don't know. But I feel like I left someone behind. Later that same day, while Emily was showering and Andrew was flipping through TV channels absent-mindedly, a news report made him freeze. It was a local special on financial crimes and the disappearance of public figures. An old clip from 2022 came on screen, a photo of a man in a grey suit smiling next to a Business Innovation Award. The caption read, "Andrew Miller, CEO of Clearmind Technologies, missing after car crash on Highway 67, body never found." Andrew dropped the remote to the floor. The image, it was him. Cleaner, maybe younger, but it was him. His whole body trembled. The coffee cup slipped from his hand and spilled across the table. His breath caught in his chest. "Andrew, are you okay out there?" Emily called from the bathroom, alarmed by the noise. He didn't answer. He stood frozen in front of the screen, as if his soul were trying to return to his body. The news reporter continued. The accident, which happened over a year ago, was never fully explained. Internal investigations revealed a struggle for company control in the days leading up to the disappearance. He dropped to his knees and clutched his head. "That's me. Oh my God, that's me." Emily came running, wrapped in a towel, her eyes wide when she saw him on the floor. "What happened? Andrew, talk to me." He pointed at the TV. "I remember the curve, the night, someone following me. Then nothing." Emily looked at the screen. Her expression changed. "That's you." Andrew shook his head, slowly trying to fight back tears. "My name is Andrew Miller. I'm not just a homeless man. I was someone." Emily knelt beside him, holding his trembling hands. "And you still are. You just forgot for a while." He looked at her like he was seeing everything for the first time, but behind the relief of remembering, a new fear began to grow in his eyes. "If I really am that man, then someone out there wanted me gone." Emily spent the next 3 days in a state of alert. She barely slept, barely ate. From the moment Andrew had dropped to his knees in front of the television, whispering his name like a forgotten sentence, something in her had shifted. There was fear, of course. But more than that, there was a restless drive that wouldn't let her sit still. While he slept, she started digging. She opened the old laptop she used for hospital reports and slowly typed, "Andrew Miller missing Dallas CEO." The first result brought a flood of images and headlines. There he was, or rather, the man sleeping in her living room. In the photos, Andrew wore flawless dark suits, smiled at gala events, and gave talks about eco-innovation. In one picture, he was cutting the ribbon at a new company headquarters alongside 2 other men, both now suspects in financial fraud cases, according to the reports. But what caught her attention the most was a zoomed-in image. Andrew was holding a ring with a blue stone, the same ring he had drawn in his notebook days earlier, without any visual reference. Emily felt her stomach turn. Her throat went dry. "It's not just a resemblance," she murmured to herself. "It's him." That night, she waited for Andrew to finish his shower. He came out of the bathroom with wet hair, wearing a simple t-shirt and sweatpants. He looked calmer, more grounded. He seemed to feel a little more whole, but still vulnerable. She was waiting in the living room with the laptop open and a firm expression on her face. "Andrew, I need to show you something." He walked over slowly. When he saw the image on the screen, he stopped. The air grew heavy. That photo. It's you." "Yes, it is. I remember that night. It was an awards ceremony in Houston. I was with the innovation team. And," he put his hands on his head, took a deep breath. "They betrayed me, Emily. My partners. They made it seem like I was unstable, like I wanted to destroy the company. But all I did was blow the whistle. I found out they were embezzling public funds, using Clearmind's name to launder money. Emily sat beside him, her face pale. And the accident? It happened so fast. I got a threat 2 days before. I thought about running, but I needed proof. Then one night, a car followed me on the highway. I ran off the road, flipped, and then just darkness. He stood up, started pacing around the room like the memories were burning through every inch of his skin. When I woke up, I was in a shelter in Fort Worth. I didn't remember my name, just that I had to run. I felt like if I went back, I'd die for real, so I got lost on purpose. I kept walking, city to city, until I collapsed on that street where you found me. Emily covered her face with her hands. Tears ran silently down her cheeks. Andrew, they think you're dead, and if they find you now, they'll want to finish what they started. The silence that followed was thick, a silence of hard choices and truths too real to ignore. Andrew sat down on the floor, leaning against the couch, staring into nothing. You shouldn't have helped me, Emily. Now you're in danger too. She crouched in front of him, her eyes filled with tears but steady. I helped you because I saw someone who was hurt. It doesn't matter who you were or are. And now, I'm not walking. Away! He shut his eyes tight, trying to contain the pain pulsing deep in his soul. You don't understand. You saved the life of a man who had already been buried alive. Emily placed her hand over his chest. Then it's time to dig up the truth. In the distance, a car passed slowly down the street. For the first time Emily noticed, its headlights were off. It slowed down as it passed in front of the house. She got up and went to the window. The car turned the corner and disappeared. But the feeling stayed. Someone already knew. That same night, while Emily locked every door and checked the windows for the third time, Andrew remained seated at the kitchen table, eyes fixed on a distant point. His body was there, but his mind was moving through walls, back into boardrooms, stained contracts and broken promises. The next day, wearing a cap, sunglasses and an oversized coat, he went out alone for the first time since Emily had taken him in. He boarded an old bus in downtown Dallas and got off in a business district where mirrored buildings stood beside quiet cafes and aging offices. He walked quickly to a small office on the second floor of a gray building. When he knocked on the wooden door with a modest sign that read, Robert Stein, Business Law, his breath caught for a moment. When the door opened, a middle-aged man with graying hair and reading glasses hanging on the tip of his nose widened his eyes. Andrew? Andrew Miller? Rob, don't say my name out loud. I need your help. This is serious. The lawyer immediately pulled him inside and locked the door. The two sat in silence for a few seconds. Andrew looked older, more worn, but the essence was still there. Robert knew. Those eyes couldn't be mistaken. Everyone thought you were dead. That's exactly what they wanted. Do you have any idea what's happened since the accident? Your company became a power game. 2 board members took control. They removed your name from all the records. One of them even appointed a temporary CEO. Then they started selling off pieces of Clearmind like it was a garage sale. Andrew swallowed hard. His hands were clenched into fists on his knees. And the press went along with all of it? With the accident report, the absence of a body, and your family's silence. Yes, no one questioned anything. They knew I was alive, or at least suspected. That's why they tried to silence me for good. The crash, it was staged. Robert nodded, grim. And do you have proof of that? Andrew pulled an envelope from the inside pocket of his coat. Inside were copies of old emails, message exchanges he had printed out himself before disappearing, sensing that something was about to happen. There was also an audio recording recovered from a flash drive that had miraculously survived the crash. Evidence he hadn't understood the value of until now. Robert read everything carefully. With this, and with your reappearance handled the right way, we could file a lawsuit. Request the annulment of all administrative actions taken after your disappearance, reclaim your position, and maybe set things straight. Andrew took a deep breath. But I don't want to come back as the same man. I've seen the world from the bottom, Rob. I slept on park benches. I was ignored by eyes that looked away. I felt hunger, and I was saved by someone who had nothing to gain from it. So, what do you want to do? I want to take the company back, yes, but to transform it. I don't want greedy investors anymore or phony awards. I want a diverse board. I want to make room for real social solutions. And I want the first act of the new Clear Mind to be funding rehabilitation centers for the homeless and victims of urban violence. Robert took off his glasses, his eyes watery. You came back greater than when you left. Andrew stood up, shook the lawyer's hand. Now, I need to go home. To her. As he left the office, he stopped in front of a discreet jewelry store window and stared at his reflection. He didn't fully recognize himself yet, but now he knew where he was going and who he was. That night, as Emily closed her notebook, at the sound of footsteps on the porch, Andrew walked in with a calm look in his eyes. You were my home when I didn't know where I belonged. Emily smiled, tears in her eyes. And now I'm going to rebuild everything, but I'll start with you. Outside, a black car parked quietly across the street. The headlights were off. A man in the passenger seat spoke on the phone, his eyes locked on the house. He's back. Spring arrived shyly in Dallas that year, washing the streets with softer breezes and longer days. At Emily's small house, the curtains danced with the warm wind, and flower pots on the porch began to bloom. It was as if the whole city was waking from a long winter, and so was Andrew. In the days following his meeting with Robert, Andrew spent hours reorganizing documents, crafting strategies, and reaching out to old allies. His determination was firm, but his gaze often drifted toward the kitchen door, waiting for the sound of Emily's laughter or the scent of the tea she always made in the afternoon. Emily, in turn, watched him from a distance. Little by little, he had become more than a guest. He was a presence, a warmth that filled the house, a comfortable silence. And when their eyes met, there was something there, a quiet spark, a longing, suspended in the air. One night, during a blackout in the neighborhood, the two sat on the couch by candlelight. The battery-powered radio played an old song, and Emily, wrapped in a blanket, sipped hot chocolate. Andrew sat beside her, his eyes fixed on the flame of the candle. Have you ever thought about how surreal all this is? Laddie, he said in a quiet voice, I ended up here as a total stranger, and now I can't imagine this place without you. Emily lowered her gaze. Sometimes I think you were thrown into my path because I needed to remember why I chose to care for people. You made me feel needed. Andrew slowly turned toward her. Something inside him was breaking, a dam of emotions held back for too long. You were the only safe place I've had in years, Emily. She smiled, shyly. That sounds like something out of a movie, or a life starting over, he replied. In the silence that followed, their faces moved closer, without rush. The kiss was gentle, but full of pent-up emotion. It wasn't just desire, it was relief, gratitude, connection. In the following days, everything felt lighter. They cooked together, laughed at Andrew's clumsy attempts with simple recipes, read books at night as if the world outside had paused. But he knew the time they had was fragile, like a bubble about to burst. One afternoon, while Emily was planting new flowers in the garden, Andrew arrived with an envelope in his hands. His face was calm, but his eyes gave away a hard decision. Emily, I need to talk to you. She wiped her hands on her jeans and turned to him, her heart already uneasy. I scheduled a meeting in Austin. It's the first official step toward reclaiming control of Clearmind. And after that, I need to disappear for a while. She frowned. What? Why? Because before I can be CEO again, before I can be anything, I need to understand who I am. I was betrayed, I fell, I was buried, but I was also saved by you. Andrew, I'm not asking anything from you. I know, but I'm asking something of myself. I need to look in the mirror and see someone whole, not just a man who was rescued by an extraordinary woman. I need to deserve to stand by your side, not out of gratitude, but by choice. She took a deep breath, swallowing the words that felt like a knot in her throat. And what if you don't come back? He gently touched her face. I will come back, because you were the beginning of my healing. That night he left quietly, with just a small bag and the promise in his eyes. Emily watched him vanish down the road, torn between pride and pain. When she closed the door, she saw the envelope he had left on the table. Inside was a handwritten letter. If I ever get lost again, I'll follow the sound of your voice. Because it was your voice that saved me in the dark. Emily closed her eyes and cried. But she knew that love, though distant now, had become a part of who she was. Summer had arrived with full force in Dallas. The heat swept through the streets like a thick veil, and the sun seemed fixed in the sky, as if refusing to move. Emily kept to her routine, working double shifts at the hospital and tending the garden with daily watering and quiet care. She had become more reserved, more contained. No one knew, but a part of her was still waiting. On the morning news, between segments on the economy and weather forecasts, an unexpected headline appeared on the hospital breakroom TV. Former missing CEO reappears and makes explosive live revelations. Emily, lifting her cup of tea to her lips, froze. The image on the screen was unmistakable. Andrew, in a television studio in New York, wearing a sharp, dark suit, clean-shaven, hair neatly combed, eyes steady. More mature, more composed, but still him. She set the cup carefully on the table, her heart racing. That's the guy who was declared dead, right? A nurse nearby commented. Emily simply nodded silently, her eyes locked on the screen. The interview was broadcasting nationally. The journalist, clearly tense, began, Andrew Miller, you've been out of the public eye for over a year. Most people believed you were dead. What really happened? Andrew took a deep breath. I was the victim of a setup, betrayed by people I once called partners. I survived an attack disguised as an accident. I ran with no memory, no direction, until I collapsed in the middle of the street. Hurt, lost. I had no name, no voice. The camera zoomed in on his face, and that's when a woman found me. A nurse, a complete stranger. She took me into her home, gave me shelter, care, respect, even when everyone around her mocked her for it. The journalist hesitated. Are you speaking about someone specific? Yes. Emily Dawson, a nurse. In Dallas, she didn't know who I was, and even so, she treated me like a human being. She was my anchor, my starting point for remembering who I am. Without her, I might never have come back. At the hospital, silence spread like a wave. Everyone stopped. Some nurses lowered their heads. Others stared at Emily, now frozen in place, eyes brimming with tears. On the TV, Andrew continued, while part of society chooses to look the other way, there are people like her who see beyond appearances, who act with compassion. Emily taught me what true dignity is, and that's why the new Clearmind will have her name among the pillars of our humanitarian foundation. The video exploded across social media. In just a few hours, Emily's name was one of the most searched in the country. Interview requests started pouring in. News outlets wanted to tell her story. The hospital received more calls in one day than it had in months. but Emily declined them all. That night, sitting in her backyard, she held in her hands the letter Andrew had left months ago. The paper was yellowed at the edges from being read so many times, and still, each word hurt. As if it were the first time, her phone vibrated. An anonymous message, "Is he coming back for you?" She read it, but didn't reply, because despite everything, she still didn't know the answer, and because, deep down, she feared it might be too late. The next morning arrived with a gray but calm sky. Jefferson Park in Dallas was still mostly empty when Emily passed through the iron gates with hesitant steps. The warm breeze rustled the leaves in the trees, and the distant sound of children playing began to color the silence of a city waking up. She didn't know why she had come. Maybe on impulse. Maybe because deep down, something in her chest told her that this place held more than memories. It held fate. It was there, months earlier, that she had first found Andrew, collapsed, wounded, invisible to the world. Now, she walked along the same concrete path surrounded by blooming trees, filled with a mixture of nostalgia and hope. The bench where he used to rest during his first days at her house was still there, beside a bed of new flowers, and then she saw him, standing next to the bench, wearing dark jeans, a simple t-shirt, and a light jacket. No bodyguards, no media, no flashing lights. Just him, Andrew, with slightly shorter hair, a calmer expression, but the same look she had learned to read, a look that spoke before any words could. When he saw her, a soft smile appeared on his lips. There was no rush. He waited for her to come closer. "I didn't know if you would come," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "Neither did I," she replied, stopping just a few steps away. "But something brought me here." Andrew looked at her like it was the first time, as if all the time apart had been just a pause between two heartbeats of the same soul. "Emily, I came back because I realized I can rebuild a company. I can give interviews. I can file lawsuits. But none of that means anything if I don't have someone to share it with." She looked away for a second, trying to hold back, the tears already forming, but he took a step forward. "You believed in me when I didn't even know who I was, when I couldn't even trust myself." And then, without warning, he knelt down on the damp grass in the park. People nearby began to notice, but no one came closer. It was as if time had stopped just for the two of them. "Now I know. I'm Andrew Miller, and I'm not just what I built. I'm also what I almost lost. You reminded me of that." He pulled a delicate ring from his pocket with a blue stone identical to the one from the dreams he had months before. "I want to build a new life with you. No rush, no show, with truth." Emily brought her hand to her mouth, surprised. Tears streamed silently down her face, but there was no more pain, only emotion. "You came back," she whispered. "I came back to the only place where I ever felt whole." She knelt and hugged him right there tightly, like she was holding the world in her arms. For the first time in a long time, Emily felt no fear, and Andrew finally felt like he was home. Months after that reunion in the park, Dallas seemed to have taken a new breath. Not just from the generous sunlight now bathing the streets, but from something deeper, unseen, yet present in every act born of compassion. Emily and Andrew together turned pain into action. From the small house where it all began, a project was born that grew like a seed planted in concrete, the Living Roots Foundation, an organization focused on reintegrating people experiencing homelessness and offering emotional and professional support to nurses and healthcare workers who, like Emily, had been silenced, exploited, or forgotten. The foundation's headquarters operated in a restored old warehouse with tall windows, murals painted by local artists, and a community garden in the back. It was more than a support center, it was a place for new beginnings. In the main hall, young volunteers rotated through workshops, medical screenings, and therapeutic listening sessions. Many of the people helped were former homeless individuals. Others were professionals who had walked away from their careers due to quiet traumas and injustices. One afternoon, a documentary crew visited the center to film a special report. Emily walked through the rooms, greeting each person with the same calm gaze as always, but now with the steadiness of someone who had survived judgment and won. She stopped in front of the camera and, with the microphone clipped to her white cotton blouse, began to speak. The evening light filtered through the glass windows, touching her face gently. For a long time, I was ridiculed for helping someone who had nothing to offer me. People said I was throwing away my career, that I was foolish, vulnerable, weak. She smiled, her eyes glassy but steady. But what I received in return is worth more than any fortune. The camera framed Andrew in the background, sitting at one of the tables, listening to a recently arrived young man tell his story. He now wore simple clothes, but carried in his eyes the strength of someone who had been reborn, not to flaunt, but to serve. Emily continued, I learned that true wealth isn't measured in dollars or in recognition. It's measured in choices, in how you choose to see others, in who you choose to be, even when no one is watching. The final images of the report showed genuine hugs, meals being served, smiles shared between strangers. They showed Emily and Andrew side by side, wiping down tables after the close of an evening support group. In the background, a sign hanging at the entrance read, Here, no one is worth less for having fallen, only worth more for choosing to rise. As the lights of the building turned off and the city outside went to sleep, Emily closed the voiceover. With her soft yet steady voice, I didn't save the life of a CEO, I just did what my heart told me to do. And when you listen to your heart, you might lose the world's approval, but you gain something it can never give you, peace. Now, tell me, what did you think of this story? Leave your rating from 0 to 10 in the comments and let us know which part touched you the most. If you enjoyed it, like the video, share it with someone who needs to hear this message, and subscribe to the channel to follow more stories like this one. Before you go, I've picked out another powerful story that I'm sure will touch your heart even more. It's waiting for you right here.